outside. 14 degrees this morning when I went out to milk the goats. It's a good day to stay inside. Over the past week or so, I've done videos that have included beans. We buy dry beans here on the homestead in bulk. We have grown some, but just not quite enough to make it through the year. Hopefully one of these years we'll accomplish that goal as well. But I love to cook beans on the stove. But I also like the convenience of canned beans. I don't buy canned beans in the store anymore, so I have decided today to make another big batch of canned beans, home canned beans. Yesterday I did a large batch of the Great Northern beans and kind of a medium batch of pinto beans as a warm-up to share with you guys and to teach you how also to can beans. It's really easy. And so today I'm going to can some more pinto beans because that is actually what we use most on the homestead, but I'm also going to can some black beans. I heard from you all that you were interested in learning how to can beans, so today I'm going to teach you. I love to buy in bulk. I buy lots of things in bulk. I buy beans, rice, oats, wheat berries, salt, probably more things than that. But I like to buy in bulk because I like to save money. I also don't like a lot of garbage, and I find that when I buy in bulk, I don't have little packages of things everywhere, and I don't have to worry about what to do with our garbage. We don't have trash pickup here in our little town. Doesn't really have much of a recycling program at all, so buying in bulk works for me all around. Similarly, the reasons why I like to can beans are because I can save money, it reduces trash, and it allows me a little bit more convenience. Even though we don't normally do a whole lot of convenience meals, convenience foods, at least if I can have some canned beans on hand, it just allows me to grab things, dump them together, and voila, there's dinner. Plus, with the pinto beans, one of our family's most favorite things to have is refried beans when I cook Mexican meals. So, lots of wins for canned beans. So, the first thing that we need to do is we need to get these beans in some pots and get them soaking. We're going to do a fast soak here. I could have, if I planned ahead and had enough forethought, I could have soaked these beans overnight and then they'd just be ready for me to get started, but I didn't do that, so we need to do a fast soak method. I'm going to be using nearly every pot I own today because when I do big canning projects like this, I just like to do a lot and get it over with, and that way I don't have to worry about it for a long time. So I'm going to use this big pot for pinto beans. I really don't have a good measurement system for you, but what I can tell you is that don't fill your pot up more than halfway with dry beans. And I actually would recommend a third of the way at the most because you just have no idea how much these are going to swell now and then when we cook them. So yesterday I got myself into a little bit of a pickle, and I think I made too many beans. It all worked out, but I was freaking out a little bit. I had to split one of my pots full of beans into two, which is why today I have 3 pots instead of just 2 pots. I guess I could have just dumped that. Okay, I'm just gonna put the rest in there. Time to order more beans. And I'm gonna put about a third of each pot with the dry beans. This is where I got into trouble yesterday, was with these littler pots. be so nice to have all of these beans just canned and ready to be used. One thing that I forgot to tell you is that when you're pouring your beans into your pot, you need to be looking out for rocks or other, foreign objects. Yesterday when I was sorting through the pinto beans, I found 3 rocks. And if I had not been paying attention, those would have gone into our beans, and inevitably I would have been the one to get it and I would have broken a tooth. So make sure you're looking for those kinds of things and to pick them out. We need to rinse these beans because they could be dirty, they could be dusty. And so the way I do that, rather than using a colander, because I'm working with so many beans, is to just fill up the pot, swish it around with water, and then carefully dump the water out. And I do that 2 or 3 times until I feel comfortable with how clear the water is. Now that they're washed, we need to actually fill this pot with water until it's at least 2 inches above the beans. Generally, I go a little bit farther than that just to make sure there's enough for them to expand. Now we gotta put these guys onto the stove and get them boiling. After they come to a boil, we're going to let them cook for only about 3 to 5 minutes and then turn off the heat and cover them. And then they'll stay there like that for 1 hour or more, at least 1 hour. While you're waiting for these to soak, right now is a perfect time to get out all your jars, set up your canning station, and maybe with your free time, plan your spring garden. I get a lot of jars from estate sales because they are very, very affordable. And to be honest, the last generation or 2 before us, they didn't really do a lot of canning, so you can find a lot of jars at estate sales for a really reasonable price. And I did a video about how every jar has a story, and it really is still true and special to me. I like to hang on to these boxes. These especially have the handwriting of the lady who canned in these jars. She made bread and butter pickles. It's just really special to me to have jars from somebody who thought canning was important, as I do for our family. The beans are done soaking, and I did it again. My eyes were bigger than my pot, and I have way too many pinto beans in here. So because I'm limited on pot space, I'm just gonna have to dish some of these out into a bowl and then try to figure out maybe how I can fit it all in. I don't know. I'll figure it out. The next step is we need to dump out all of the water that's in here right now, and then rinse these soaked beans, put them back in the same pots, fill them back up with water, again another 2 to 3 inches above the level of beans. And this time we actually need to cook them. So bring it back up to a boil and cook them for 30 minutes before we can can them. So the black beans over here are done, and the pinto beans are still cooking. One thing I didn't tell you is that we need to start a pot of clean, fresh water to be boiled. So this is boiling water, which we'll use when we're canning. Over here are the 2 canning pots that I'm going to be using. They're both pressure canners. They're both double stack. I have about 2 inches of water in each one. This is a Presto pressure canner, and it has a mark on the inside where the water level should be. This is an All-American canner. It does not have a mark, but you put about 2 inches of water in there. I'm going to add a splash of white vinegar to both. Not everybody does this, but I really like to do it because it saves me a lot of time after the canning process is done, because all the jars come out really nice and clean and I barely have to wipe them up at all. So the black beans are ready to be canned. We're going to move over to the little canning station that I have created, and we're going to get going. So the black beans I'm going to can all in pint jars because we generally just have a little bit at a time in a recipe. So I'm going to start off by canning the black beans and then move on to the pinto beans, where I hope to actually do some in quart jars. Now, one thing I did not tell you guys is that while I was preparing everything, I also added a little bit of salt to every one of the jars. The pint jars, I added just under half a teaspoon of salt. The quart jars, a mounded half teaspoon. Now, salt is completely optional. You don't need to put it in at all. I tend to like it in the beans. So we're going to start putting the beans in the jar. I'm using a slotted spoon so that all of the water that the beans are in comes out. We're going to be backfilling with clean water that has been boiled after we get the jars filled up. Now we're filling them to about a generous 1 inch from the top. So we're adding fresh boiling water to the beans until it gets right above the beans at the 1 inch mark. And we're going to use a device to poke down in there to get any of the air bubbles out to make sure that the water level is at a good height. Okay, and then we're going to check. We're going to use our measuring tool at the 1 inch mark and double check that the liquid and the beans are not higher than 1 inch. They are good. We're going to wipe off the rim, put on our lid and a ring, and put it right in the canner. We're going to keep doing that until our canner is full. The last one for the first row is going in, and then there's a shelf that you need to put in between the 2 layers to make sure that the top jars stay stable. So the black beans are all done. They actually, the entire batch fit an entire canner full, which ended up being 20 pints. So that's going to be perfect. So I'm just going to put the lid on this canner, and I'm going to get it going, putting it on high heat until we see steam coming out of here. Now that steam is coming out, we can set a timer. That needs to happen for 10 minutes before we put the weight on. In the meantime, I can start canning the pinto beans. Those that didn't fit in here, I actually put on the stove in one of the black bean pots. So hopefully the timing will be perfect and I'll be able to put those in jars as soon as I'm done with these. So the same system goes. You just fill up the quart jar until it's 1 inch from the top, fill it with fresh water, put it in the new canner. This time I'm going to be using my All-American canner for these quarts because I can stack quart jars too high. My Presto canner, I can only double stack pint jars. That's kind of why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. The first layer of the pinto bean quart jars are done, and in goes this shelf. So both canners are full and they're going. The pint jars need to process at 10 pounds of pressure for 75 minutes. The quart jars need to process at 10 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes. Now, because our elevation is above 1,000 feet above sea level, we need to process at 15 pounds of pressure. So we're going to get these guys going and process them, and when we're all done, we'll show you all of our hard work. Well, I am super pleased to have all of these beans ready to go on our pantry shelf. The pinto beans are done. They're just still cooling in the big canning pot. So you guys, I hope that you learned something. I hope that you gained the confidence to try canning beans yourself. It's really not that hard as long as you understand what you're doing. If you enjoyed this video and if you're enjoying our channel, please subscribe. We would appreciate it. Don't forget to check us out on all of our social media, including Instagram. And until next time, thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care and God bless.